I'm going to show you a fine strategic game played with the Kalashnikov Sicilian. So the opening starts out like this. It's an open Sicilian and black plays e5. And coincidentally, my Chessable course on the Kalashnikov is still on sale. A couple days more. So do check that out. I'll put the link below for you to click through. Likewise, my Anti-Sicilians course on Chessable as well. So, let's have a look at this position. Knight takes c6. Not the best option. This is really a rarity in professional chess. But it is quite common at amateur levels. I remember as a kid facing this quite often. And one of the viewers of the channel said, well, could I, show some games and look at the strategy with knight takes c6 as they face it quite a lot. So I'm very happy to do that. So why do I sort of cast doubt on this move? Why don't you see this move so often at higher levels? Well, it's because this brings a pawn from the side into the centre. So you can see that pawn on c6 covers that crucial d5 square, which can allow black to push forward with d5. For example, let's play some standard moves for white. Bishop c4. Okay, nice development. Hits the e-pawn, knight c3, bishop b4. Okay, an annoying pin. And there are some threats here. So bishop d2, and already black can play d5, liberation station as I call it in the Kalashnikov course. The d-pawn supported by the pawn on c6, and when you control the centre with pawns, then you start to dominate the board. Okay, well, let's come back to this position. Well, I'd like to look at a game between two players played in the Slovakian Team Championship in 2014. Miroslav Minich and Rudolf Toma. And here white played c4. Now, given that it's a lot easier for black to play d5, then in some ways this is a logical move, trying to clamp down on that d5 square. But there is a drawback to this move. There's a gap between those pawns as big as the gap between my two front teeth. That's the problem. So black played knight f6. Okay, standard move, hitting the pawn. Bishop d3 defends the e-pawn. And bishop c5. Black could probably equalise immediately with d5, but that would lead to too many pawn exchanges. Bishop c5 is a nice move. So that bishop is on this beautiful diagonal and looks at that lovely d4 square as well. So both sides castled, knight c3 and d6. Okay, nice and solid from black, and it's nice to put that pawn out. Put the bishop outside the pawn chain. So what does white do now? It's not obvious. Putting any pressure on that pawn on d6 is very unlikely. It wouldn't do much. Can't push forward with f4. Obviously, there's a pin. Well, white played bishop g5. Pinning. I suppose logical, given that the bishop can't get back to e7 to break the pin. Okay, so I'd like you to have a think already. How would you play as black in this position? Okay, you have a think, I'll have a drink. Cheers. Black to play. h6. Well, there's no harm in putting the question to the bishop. If the bishop exchanges itself off for the knight, then black can be very happy with that bishop unopposed on c5. And it brings the queen to a good square. So white put the bishop back on h4. Now, I hope that in playing h6, you also anticipated that the follow-up, g5. This is a really strong move. In positions where white may be able to maneuver a knight around to f5, could be dubious, or when h4 makes sense to break up the king side. Could be disadvantageous to play g5. But here, well, with this bishop so well placed on this diagonal, this is great for black. h5, really strong, just threatening to trap the bishop. And if h4, well, I suspect there's a lot of good moves, but knight g4 looks really powerful, threatening to take on h4. Remember that f pawn cannot move. So white played h3, just giving the bishop a square on h2. Bishop was pushed back. Yeah, bishop e6, that's fine. Just a bit of development. And this is already not easy for white, because, you know, how do you attack these pawns? I mean, white tried queen d2, hitting g5, but then knight h5, so that is now defended by the queen. Now here is where I would have shut things down on the queen side. Black rushed in with knight f4, and it works out extremely well, but I think the best move is simply a5. This is such a useful move anyway, but it shuts down b4. I mean, later on, it could be possible to launch some kind of minority attack against these pawns and create a weakness there on the queen side. You know, again, this shows that it was inadvisable for white to exchange on c6, because black can use this semi-open b file very well in combination with the a pawn. So I think that's the best move. But black rushed in with knight f4. It does work out very well. But here I think bishop takes f4 would have been the best chance. Let's just push that bishop back. And then king h1. So the idea is to put the knight via g1 on f3, which hits h4, and then that g pawn can be protected by the rook. That's not so clear. Let's put it like that. Okay, but white got it wrong. Exchanged with the knight, and this bishop is a dreadful piece. And queen g5. So black can just put some pressure on the g file, and in fact all the major pieces came over. Now black has tripled, but white has held g2 without any problem. So it's not going to be possible to crack white's position immediately. By the way, white played b3. I mean, that's more just, well, white hasn't got a plan in this position. So it's kind of a nothing move. But the question is, you know, how would you try to break through with black? It's not so easy, but it's a dream of a position for black. It really is. You know, look how poor that bishop is on h2 compared to this wonderful piece. So how would you play as black? Well, in the game, black played queen d8 and started manoeuvring around here, but actually didn't get very far. Again, I think a5 is the simplest way to play. That shuts down any counterplay from white. And later on, it might well be possible to play that minority attack, breaking up those pawns and opening up files. I mean, it looks really logical. But also, that secures the queen side, and one can concentrate on doing things on the king side, as black finally did. Okay, the game, queen d8. Rook cd1. In fact, this is quite an interesting move, b4. And you can see how actually both sides of the board are connected. Black is still fine here if rook g5 is played. But if, you know, black is mistaken, wants to take that pawn, you can see now this pawn is available. Okay, that one's not so clear. You can see the difference. If you play a5, everything is covered. There's no chance of any disturbance. As I said, black can play rook g5 here and is still better. but it would have been an interesting chance. Anyway, rook d1, queen a5. Yeah. The queen is sort of probing, but doesn't get very far. Rook g5. Yeah. About time that square was covered. And black is still in control in this position. And now decides, yeah, well, wasn't doing much with the queen. Let's put it back. And queen g8. Okay, so there's just been a little bit of a shuffle of those major pieces on the g file. Finally, a5 is played. Good. That means that white has no play on the queen side whatsoever. I'd have probably done it about 15 moves ago. Now, how are you going to make progress? I mean, there are quite a few possibilities here for black. White is so tied up here. It's just a wonderful position. Black goes for f6. Could try f5 as well, actually, but f6 is good. Another idea might be to put the queen on b6, hit that pawn, but, well, I think f6 is a good move anyway. And this was the idea. Bishop f7 to come to h5. So, yeah, I mean, if, for example, bishop e2, this one hits the queen moves away, bishop takes f2, black breaks through. So in the game, white played bishop takes f4. I mean, this is hopeless. And in fact, you don't even need to take the bishop. Bishop h5 is crushing. Move the queen away and only then take. But white played this, and then bishop takes queen. And that was the end of that. So, in some ways, a bit of an anticlimax, actually. White messed around, black messed around a bit in this game, but was in such control that it didn't really matter. I mean, to have this position after 23 moves as black is just a gift. As I said, this is a key move, a5. And then, well, one could very easily just go for this f6 bishop h5 maneuver. Looks very strong to me, as was played in the game eventually. Remember, my Chessable course, King's Kalashnikov Sicilian, is on sale at the moment for another couple of days, I think till Sunday evening. So do check it out, as well as the Anti-Sicilians course as well. I'll put the links down below. So now is the time to strike. I'm also going to be looking at this knight takes c6 move on my Patreon channel for my monthly opening survey. I'm going to look at it in a little bit more detail than this. Well, quite a bit more detail, actually. So if you're interested in that, then do check out the right Patreon level to go for. Thanks for watching.